follow along, we're going to look in 1 Corinthians chapter 9 to start off with. And this morning we're going to talk about 1 Corinthians. We've been going through all the books of the Bible, all the way from Genesis through the whole Old Testament to the New Testament. We're in 1 Corinthians today. And you know, I do believe this. The Bible is an intimidating book for a lot of reasons. A lot of people are intimidated by the Bible, don't feel like they can read the Bible, don't even try. One of the reasons is because it has 66 different books in it. But one thing that stops people before they even get started is the fact the names of the books are hard to understand. You get in the Old Testament, you start off, you got Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Ecclesiastes, Habakkuk. What in the world is that? Before you even get started, you don't really even, you feel like this is very hard to understand before you even actually try to read the actual Bible. Get the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, that's a little easier. We know those names. Those aren't weird names. But then 1 Corinthians, and I thought, what is 1 Corinthians? And it's kind of important to understand what the books of the Bible actually are. If you can't understand the title of a book, you're probably not going to read the book. And so what is 1 Corinthians? Well, 1 Corinthians, in order to understand it, there's a city named Corinth. There was a city named Corinth in Bible times. And Paul was a missionary who visited the city of Corinth. And while he was there, a lot of Corinthians became Christians. I'm actually going to show you a verse, Acts 18:8, honey. We only have one screen that's functioning this morning, but if you can see it, that's good. If not, that's okay too. It says, and many of the Corinthians, hearing, believed and were baptized. Now that's out of the book of Acts. That's when Paul was on a mission trip. He goes in Corinth. The Corinthians hear the gospel, they believe, and they're baptized. Paul stays in that town for about 18 months teaching those people. Then he leaves, and he writes them a letter. And in the letter, he explains to them how to be a better Christian. That's the letter of 1 Corinthians. So what 1 Corinthians is, it's a letter that Paul wrote explaining to people who already were believers. They were Christians, and he explains to them how to be a better Christian. If you're sitting here today and you say, I am a believer, I am a Christian, then this book that we're going to talk about today explains to you how you can be a better Christian. Okay? So I think that we can get a lot out of it today. We're going to start with one verse. 1 Corinthians 9:24. This is a verse that's really, really helpful, I feel like. 1 Corinthians 9:24. We'll start by reading just one verse. Paul says, do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may obtain it. So Paul says, when you have a race, everybody runs. If you're just walking down the road, you're not in a race. Probably not. Okay? Everybody runs, but he says only one person gets the prize. What that means, one person wins. One person gets the gold medal. One person gets the blue ribbon. One person is first place. So we all understand that. And he says, run in such a way that you may obtain it. The first point we're going to make this morning, we're going to make 2 points. If you want to be a better Christian, we must run to win. We've got to run the Christian life like we're trying to win a race. We need to live our Christian life like we're trying to win a gold medal. Like we're trying to do the absolute best that we can do for the Lord with the one life we've been given. Now, as a kid, I ran in some foot races, okay? I probably won a few foot races when I was a kid. But it's been a while since I've been in a good foot race, okay? I hurt my knee in softball this year. I had to get a pinch runner, so Lee knows about that. So I'm not too much about running a race anymore, but I thought, you know what? I get in a race every morning. Every morning I have to take 3 kids to school. And it's a race. They have to be there by 7:50. Have to go to the primary school. They have to go to the intermediate school. Then have to come back and take Ace to preschool. And we have to be there by 7:50. And we're supposed to leave. We started off. We're going to leave at 7 o'clock. Then 7:15. We've been leaving at 7:33. Okay, that makes it a race. And I'll tell you what happened a few days ago. I'm going to the primary school. Some of y'all understand what I'm about to say here. And we're running late. And it's a race, okay? Because if they're late, they get a tardy, you have to get out, walk into school, check them in, all this. I don't do that. It's a race. So when we go to the primary school, there's a cut-through road where the parents are supposed to go this way to drop your kid off. But the cut-through road goes out through the woods, and it's a longer route. So I said, well, we're not going through that road today, because we're cutting through the middle of the parking lot. So we go up there, and we cut through the parking lot. Some of y'all know I'm talking about cut off that extra time right there. We cut through the parking lot. Well, lo and behold, Lee McFarland cuts right in front of me right there. Now, I hadn't even seen him. I didn't know where he came from. He told me later on that he was right behind me. When he saw me do that, he told his kids, watch this. Okay, so he drove 75 miles an hour through the woods right there trying to beat me. So he got in front of me right there. He beat me. Okay? But that wasn't in the story. Because I had to go to the next school, and he has to go get his 64-ounce Coke every morning at the gas station. So I'm coming right there. I got to get to the intermediate school. So I cut through by the law office right there. Y'all know I'm coming to get over to 145. You can cut through right there. I cut through there. Then I cut behind the old jail. Okay, right there where it says no through traffic. I cut through there, and lo and behold, I pulled out right in front of Lee McFarland. Okay, I beat him. I don't think he told his kids about that. Okay, I won that race. But see, if you're in a race, what are you trying to do? You're trying to win. You're giving it 110%. You're going all out. You're not slack. You're not lazy. You're not half-hearted. You're giving it your best effort. And listen, that's the way we're supposed to live the Christian life. We're supposed, Paul said, only one person's going to get a gold medal in a race. You need to run like you're trying to win the gold medal. That's what we need to do. How does that look in our life? I'm going to show you a few verses right here. We're going to preach about some things that are very real this morning, okay? 1 Corinthians 6:12. Listen to this. You want to run a good Christian race? You want to be the best Christian you can possibly be? I'm not talking about halfway trying. I'm not talking about putting forth a little effort. I'm talking about trying to win the gold medal. 1 Corinthians 6:12 is a great verse. Listen to what Paul said. All things are lawful for me, but all things are not helpful. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be brought under the power of anything. See, what he's saying right there, this is true for the Christian life. If you want to be the best Christian you need to be, you don't need to just ask yourself, is this legal? Is it okay for me to do this? What's the question you need to ask yourself? Is this helpful? Does this help me be a better Christian? In other words, we say this all the time, well, I don't see anything wrong with it. I don't think that's wrong. It's not just a question of, is it wrong? It's a question of, is it helpful? Is this going to make me a better Christian to put my time, my attention, my focus in this area? See, if I'm trying to win a gold medal, I'm not just trying not to break the law. I'm trying to do all that I can for the Lord. Paul, in Hebrews 12, the Bible says to throw off every weight and the sin that so easily ensnares us, and run with endurance the race that's set before us. See, there's sin that'll slow you down, but there can be other things in your life too that it may not be sinful, but it's not helpful, and it's not going to make you a better Christian. It's actually going to prevent you from being a better Christian. Two examples this morning of things that might be legal, but I would say they're not helpful. The first one is alcohol. All right? In 2017, you can go buy alcohol and you can drink as much alcohol as you want to. It is legal. Okay? It is not against the law. And a lot of people would say, well, I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't see anything wrong with drinking. Well, I'm going to say this, and somebody might disagree with this. I'm not going to sit here and try to argue with you that it's a sin to drink a glass of wine or to drink a single beer. But I will tell you this all day long, it is certainly not going to be helpful. And what Paul said is, all things are lawful, but all things are not helpful. And then he said this, I will not be brought under the power of anything. You know what he's saying right there? There's nothing that's going to control me in my life. I'm not going to be addicted to anything. I'm not going to put myself under the influence of anything. So we know this. Alcohol is an extremely powerful drug. That's what it is. It's highly addictive. I've got an article I've read at the Victory Home before about how alcohol is the deadliest drug. All right? Now, here's the issue in our society today. And I'm going to do this, and I feel like this is something we need to talk about. We need to talk about it in church. Okay? Bentley, come up here, Bentley. Bentley's 10 years old. Now, I just think we have to think about it like this. All right? He's getting taller. What am I going to tell Bentley about alcohol? What do y'all think I'm going to tell him? Do you think I'm going to tell him, Bentley, when you're a teenager and you go to homecoming or prom, just drink a little bit, son. Just a little bit. Not too much, just a little bit. Then when you go off to school and you go to the University of Georgia, just drink a little bit, son. You don't drink too much. And then when you get married, just drink a little bit. And when you have kids, just drink a little bit. Don't drink too much. Don't get drunk. Just drink a little bit. Do y'all think I would tell him that? Would that be good advice for me to tell my 10-year-old son? No. And you know what? I'm not going to tell anybody in the world that. Right? If I wouldn't tell my own kid that, I'm not going to be the pastor and tell anybody in my church that. Just drink a little bit. Just control what you drink. To me, good job, Bentley. You did good, bud. It is a deadly danger that you expose yourself to. I'll give you another verse about it. 1 Corinthians 8:13. Paul said this. You can turn over and read this, and I think this applies. Listen to what Paul said about this. Therefore, if food makes my brother stumble, I will never again eat meat, lest I make my brother stumble. See, Paul said, if somebody thinks I shouldn't be eating meat and it makes my brother stumble for me to eat meat, then I'm not going to eat any meat because I don't want to make my brother stumble. The same thing is obviously true of alcohol. Some people, it's going to make them stumble big time. It's a huge problem for them. And so when we start saying, well, I drink a little bit and it's okay to drink, there's a great chance somebody else is going to drink and it's going to cause huge problems in their life. The dangers of alcohol, this is a great example. A few years ago, it's probably been 5 or 6 years ago, I went to a wedding in Florida for somebody who was a college friend of mine. And I was very surprised at this wedding. I'm kind of naive still. They had an open bar at the wedding, okay? And at the wedding, it was all church people. All these people that went to a certain church. And at that church, they obviously think it's okay to drink. And the guy who did the wedding was sitting at the table with us drinking, open bar drinking. It was really eye-opening. And I just think, man, this ain't good. This can't be good. And guess what happened? Within the last year, the pastor of that church is one of the number 3 biggest churches in the United States, was fired. They had to fire their pastor. Guess why? He's an alcoholic. See, all things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. And I'll tell you this, one day you might have to fire Ben Huff. You might fire me for something, and it ain't going to be because I'm an alcoholic. You know why? Because I'm not going to drink any alcohol. It might be lawful, but I don't see how it's going to be helpful. And a lot of people might want to say, well, yeah, it's not that bad. It's not, and I understand that. I want to read y'all a little something right here, and we're going to move on quick. But I think this is very eye-opening. Max Lucado wrote this. If you know anything about Christian books, Max Lucado is the #1 Christian author in the United States. Listen to what he says. Max Lucado likes to drink. Listen to this. I like beer. I always have. Ever since my high school buddy and I drank ourselves sick with a case of quarts, I've liked beer. I like the way it washes down a piece of pizza and mutes the spice of enchiladas. It goes great with peanuts at a baseball game and seems an appropriate way to crown 18 holes of golf. Out of the keg, tap, bottle, or frosty mug, it doesn't matter to me. I like beer. Too much. You know what he goes on and talks about? Look, you know what he's saying right there? And I appreciate his honesty. He likes alcohol. He does not drink. Okay? But he talks about he likes it. You know what the reality is? Everybody says, well, I don't see anything wrong with it. You know what it is? People like to drink beer. And therefore they say there's nothing wrong with it. It's not helpful. Very rarely you hear somebody argue it's a good thing. What they say, they try to make a case for it, but the reality is they just like it. And so I would just warn anybody against that. You might disagree with that position, but I would say this, just because it's lawful does not mean it's helpful. And I would never tell my kids it's okay. I would never tell you it's okay. I'll never stand here and tell anybody it's okay because I do not think it for multiple reasons. Next thing, that's the first thing. If you want to run a good race, there's some things that are lawful, but they're not helpful. Here's the second thing. Screen time. Screen time. You say, what are you talking about? Well, alcohol is a big problem, but I don't think alcohol is the biggest problem in our society. One of the biggest problems in our society is screen time. What does that mean? It means the time that you spend watching TV, on your phone, on a computer, in front of a computer, screen time. Listen to this. 1 Corinthians 10. Paul says this. Listen to verse 23. This is going to get very real right here for a second. Listen to what Paul says. 1 Corinthians 10:23. All things, he says the same thing. All things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful for me, but not all things edify. It's a very similar statement. All things are lawful, but all things are not helpful. Look, you can sit here and we can say this all day long. There's nothing wrong with watching TV. There's nothing wrong with being on your phone. There's nothing wrong with Facebook. Nothing wrong with all this stuff. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not a sin. It's not a sin. That's not even that's not the question. What's the question? Is it helpful? Does this help me be a better Christian? Very rarely is the answer to that yes. Okay? I want to show you something right here. I'm going to give you a look inside the Huff House. Now, we've got two screens that are not working today, so this is going to be difficult to see this. But we did some pictures to show you, and I'm preaching to myself, my wife, my kids this morning, okay? Honey, see if you can show the first picture, if this is going to work. You can't see it on the front or back screen. All right, right here, you know what these are? They're tablets. Every one of my kids has a tablet. Okay? It's not unusual for me to come in my house and every single one of my kids to be on a tablet, staring at it after school. Is that true, Bentley? It's true. You want to see World War III? You know who else likes tablets? This is hard to believe. Gentry. You know what she'll do all day long? This is what, I want Barbie, 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 Barbie. Wants to watch Barbie YouTube videos. She's 2 years old. Okay? And she'll get their tablets while they're at school and run them down to 1%. And they come home, they've had those things on the charger all day long. You want to see World War III? Let them come home and find 1% on that tablet. They're getting a fist fight with Gentry over that. Okay? So kids have tablets. Watch the next picture. I don't know if y'all can see this or not. Jennifer took this picture of me sitting in the chair. You can't really see it good because we don't have a big thing. But I got the laptop in my lap. I got the remote in one hand, a phone in the other hand, and drinking a Mountain Dew. So that's actually staged. That's true. Now one more picture here. This is Jennifer in her perch. Okay. She lays on the love seat, and she's got the ability to look at her phone with one eye and the TV with the other eye. And at the same time, listen to me, because I'll say, honey, are you listening? She says, yes, I'm listening. So she's, y'all know how that is, don't you? So that's the way that most families are. I'm going to read y'all something, ironically, off my phone. Okay? I want y'all to listen to this. A research study. Let's just go ahead and guess. I want y'all to guess. Somebody guess. How much time per day does the average adult spend looking at a phone or a screen? Some type of screen. 3 hours. Anybody else want to guess? 4. Mike says 4. Listen to this. The average American spends nearly half a day staring at a screen. A new Nelson Company audience report reveals that adults in the United States, adults now, devoted about 10 hours and 39 minutes each day to consuming media during the first quarter of the year. The report included how much time we spend using our tablets, smartphones, computers, multimedia devices, video games, radios, DVDs, DVRs, and TVs. Now listen to this. This is from CNN. This is not a preacher saying this. Listen to this. There are 168 hours in a week. The work week still takes up 40 of those hours. We sleep 49. If we assume all personal care such as eating, bathing, dressing, preparing food is 3 hours a day, then we have 58 hours a week left over for other things. 58 hours a week. Listen. This includes hobbies, sports, spending time with children, spending time with friends and romantic partners, reading, learning, exercise, participating in a faith community, volunteer work, house maintenance, he added. If people are spending over 50 hours a week with media for entertainment purposes, then there's really no time left for any of the other things we value. You understand right there? You don't have time for nothing else. You know what you're doing? And listen to what he listed right there. Spending time with your kids, hobbies, sports, time with friends, romantic partners, reading, learning, exercising, participating in a faith community, which is church, volunteer work, house maintenance. You don't have enough time. You spend 10 hours and 39 minutes a day. 10 hours and 39 minutes a day? You know, I think Paul would have something to say about that. That might be legal. That's certainly not helpful. Is that going to help you be a better Christian? And you know what I thought about? This is a great verse, 1 Corinthians 13:11. You You can listen to this, and you can turn there, 1 Corinthians 13:11. This is a classic little statement. Paul said, when I was a child, I spoke as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child, but when I became a man, I put aside childish things. Kid, you know what he's saying? There's time to grow up. You know what's interesting about that study, what I quoted? You know what it said? Adults. Adults spend 10 hours and 39 minutes a day. I was telling Jennifer last night, I was thinking about this myself. If you're still playing Candy Crush, adults, see, it's an issue. If you know what I'm talking about, it's a big problem. I quit Candy Crush a long time ago because I got stuck on Level 89. You know what I'm talking about. But look, it's a problem here that not only detracts, look, it detracts from your family, it detracts from your marriage, and whether or not we want to just say it detracts from your relationship with the Lord. It is a tremendous problem, and it's certainly not helpful in most cases. And look, this is what we would say, what else is there to do? What else is there to do? Well, what else is there to do? You know what, and I'm not going to time to get into all this, but Paul in 1 Corinthians 7, he talks about how a husband and wife should have relations whenever they want to, regularly have relations with each other. Y'all know what I'm talking about, I hope. But you know what he says? Except that you, by mutual consent, deprive yourself for a season that you may devote yourself to prayer and fasting. See, you know what he said? You're not going to sleep together because you're going to devote yourself to prayer and fasting. I told Jennifer, we're so far away from that where, hey, we're not sleeping together. We're going to be praying and fasting. There's studies out there that show how much partners, how much less they sleep together now because of screen time, okay? So we're not doing it to devote ourselves to prayer and fasting. We're doing it because we're so wrapped up in the screens. It's killing our marriages and our relationships with each other. Paul goes on in 1 Corinthians 7:35, listen to this. 1 Corinthians 7:35, Paul talks about how it's better not to marry than to marry. And he gets in this big thing, and he talks about it for a long time. Why? So you can serve the Lord without distraction. Paul actually wanted somebody to consider not getting married so they can serve the Lord without distraction. See, he thought you could serve the Lord without distraction. The problem is we got way too much distraction, right? It's not even our spouse. We ain't even paying our spouse any attention because we're so wrapped up in what we're looking at, what we're watching, who we're watching, what's going on in the world. I want to read something to y'all. And this is, to me, this says it better than anything else in the world could say it. This is a prayer request that was put in the prayer box about a month ago. And I read it, and it stood out to me. And then the ladies who prayed showed it to me, too, because of what it says. This summarizes it perfect. Please pray for my family's desire to be turned away from TVs, phones, etc., and turn toward God and His work. They would be busy for Him. See? That's true in so many families. And I'm not just preaching to you, I'm talking to myself too. This is a problem. And I think that we have to realize if I'm going to run to win, if I'm going to try to be the best Christian I can be, I can't spend 10 hours and 39 minutes a day looking at a screen. I'm going to take the time here to show you something else too in 1 Corinthians 14 about how it's hurting our lives. In 1 Corinthians 14, Paul talks about how everybody needs to prophesy. Now that sounds really weird to say everybody needs to prophesy. What does it mean to prophesy? To prophesy means that you speak biblical truth to other people. That you can speak biblical truth to someone else. 1 Corinthians 14:1, listen to this. He says, pursue love and desire spiritual gifts, but especially that you may prophesy. See, he's telling them, you want to try to be able to prophesy. Listen to what he says, verse 3. But he who prophesies speaks edification and exhortation and comfort to men. See, you want to be able to speak to someone else biblical truth to help them in their life. That's what you want to be able to do as a Christian. He goes on and talks about church. Listen to verse 23. He says, if the whole church comes together in one place and all speak with tongues, and there come in those who are uninformed or unbelievers, will they not say that you're out of your mind? If you've ever been in church where everybody's speaking in tongues, you agree with that. They're out of their mind. It looks that way. But listen to what he says. But if all prophesy, and an unbeliever, an uninformed person comes in, he is convinced by all. He is convicted by all. And thus the secrets of his heart are revealed, and so falling down on his face, he will worship God and report that God is truly among you. How is it then, brethren, whenever you come together, each one has a psalm, has a teaching, has a tongue, has a revelation, has an interpretation? Will all things be done for edification? You know what Paul wanted to see, what his goal was? Everybody in the church to participate and have something to say. Everybody in the church be able to speak and speak biblical truth, to encourage somebody else, to edify, to exhort, to build up. And he said, hey, if somebody walks in and everybody's speaking biblical truth, everybody's participating, you know what? Everybody can't participate today. You know why we can't participate? You know, the only things we can talk about. The only things we can talk about most of the time are the weather, politics, and sports. You know why? That's all we watch. That's what we spend all our time doing. That's all we talk about. Talk about the Bible? Say something about the Bible? About the Bible? You know why? Because where's our nose buried? It's not buried in the Bible. If you notice it's buried in the Bible, a tenth as much as just looking at our phone, we know something about the Bible. We read something in the Bible that was good. We'd be able to talk to somebody about the Bible. It's a huge issue. Paul wanted everybody, listen to this. This is one of the saddest verses in the Bible. What Paul says to this Corinthians in 1 Corinthians 3. He says, and I, brethren, could not speak to you as spiritual people, but as to carnal, as to babes in Christ. I fed you with milk and not with solid food. For until now you are not able to receive it. Even now you're not able. You know what he said? You're a baby in Christ. You had to drink milk. I had to give you a bottle. You know why? Because you don't know. You're not mature. You haven't grown in the Lord. You don't know a hill of beans still. There's things in the Bible I can't even talk about because you don't understand it. That's what he was telling them. And you know what he told them? This is what I goes back to. In a race, everybody runs. You need to run like you're trying to win the gold medal. Right? You ain't going to train for the Olympics on the computer. You're not going to train for the Olympics on a phone. We have got to look at our life and say, whether or not I realize it or not, whether or not I can justify it or not, I can waste almost my entire life here without ever growing in the Lord and doing anything for the kingdom of God largely because of screen time. What Paul actually is trying to do I'll move on. But look, there's a song, and this verse has always stood out to me. I think the name of the song is Motions, but this is what it says. I don't want to spend my whole life asking what if I had given everything instead of going through the motions. What if I had really devoted my life to this? What if I had really applied myself? What if I had really spent my time and my talents and my money? What if I had really focused on being a better Christian? What if I had really focused on learning and talking to other people and teaching other people? What could I have been? I could have won a gold medal. I could have been better. That's one thing in sports. You look back and you think, I could have been better in high school if I had done this, if I had done this, if I had better. You're going to look back at your life and say, you know what? I'm not near the father. I'm not the husband. I'm not the pastor I ought to be because I'm not putting forth my best effort. Other things that might be legal, I might not even be breaking the law, but it doesn't matter if it's legal. It matters if it's helpful or not. And you might sit there and say, well, preacher, what do you think we ought to do? Well, I'll say this. We have to limit ourselves. You have to. You have to take apps off your phone. I believe that. I'm preaching to myself, I'm preaching to everybody. You have to limit yourself. You have to take apps off your phone. You can't give yourself unrestricted access to the internet and your phone and look at it every time you stop at a stop sign. It's crazy. You have to make changes. Bottom line, you have to try to use your phone for good if you're going to. I'm going to start putting sermons on Facebook. I haven't had Facebook. I'm going to start putting sermons on Facebook. You can share the sermons on Facebook. You have to use it constructively if you're going to use it at all. It's a serious issue. You might think, well, I shouldn't be talking about it. I'm wasting time talking about it. It's a tremendous issue. In every home in the United States of America, it's an issue. And the question is, it's lawful, but is it helpful? So if you're going to be a better Christian, you've got to run to win. The same thing you've got to do is you've got to fight against sin. Two things if you're going to be a good Christian. You run to win. You put forth your best effort. The second thing is you fight against sin. In Corinth, Paul talks about this a lot. They are struggling with sin. In chapter 1, verse 11, he talks about there's contentions among you. They could not get along. They could not get along with each other. They sued each other in court. 1 Corinthians 6, he talks about that. 1 Corinthians 5, listen to what he says. This is just the Christian life. He says it's actually reported there is sexual immorality among you. See, the Christian life, it's very possible once you become a believer. That's what happened in Corinth. These people were believers. They got involved in sexual sin. See, it's possible to be a Christian and to fall back into, we call it backslide, back into sin. Well, this letter is written to encourage them to fight against sin. Do not stay in that condition. If you're going to run a good race, you've got to fight against sin. 1 Corinthians 10:13 is a classic verse. Everybody needs to know this verse, really. This is a great verse talking about our fight against sin. Listen to what it says. No temptation has overtaken you except such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but with the temptation will also make the way of escape, that you may be able to bear it. You know what he's saying? There's no temptation you're going to go under that everybody else ain't going to do either. And there's a way to avoid that temptation. God is faithful. He provides a way of escape. You know what he's telling them? You don't have to succumb to that temptation. You don't have to give in. There's a way to overcome that. 1 Corinthians 10:21 is a great verse. It's just a reminder to everybody. And they were struggling with real sin. Paul tells them to flee. In 1 Corinthians 6:18, he tells them to flee sexual immorality. He tells them to flee from idolatry. You've got to run away from sin. You've got to get out of that situation. You've got to avoid it like the plague. You have got to fight against sin if you're going to be a good Christian. 1 Corinthians 10:21, that's what he says. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons. You cannot partake of the Lord's table and the table of demons. In other words, you can't have sin on Monday, the Lord on Tuesday, sin on Wednesday, the Lord on Thursday. You can't be back and forth. You have to serve the Lord faithfully. You're not going to be perfect, but you cannot sit at the table of demons. That's the reality of the Christian life. You have to fight against sin. There's two warnings right here in Corinth that he gave the Corinthians that we're almost done. In 2 minutes we'll be done with this. There's two warnings he gave them about sin that I think are pertinent, very relevant for everybody here. 1 Corinthians 5:6. Listen to what he says. It's just reality. 1 Corinthians 5:6. Your glorying is not good. Do you not know that a little leaven leavens the whole lump? That's a fancy way of saying a little bit of sin is going to mess up your life. You cannot tolerate what we would call misdemeanors, what we would call small sins, innocent sins. There's no such thing. He's telling them, we talked about it in Sunday school this morning, James 1:15, when desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it's full grown, brings forth death. Sin grows, sin expands. You cannot let a little sin be in your life. You cannot have this one area of your life that you know is not pleasing to the Lord remain in your life. That sin will grow, it will expand. It'd be like raising a baby tiger. A baby tiger might be cute at first, but guess what? You can't raise a baby tiger in your house, it'll kill you. That sin's going to do the same thing. You cannot tolerate that sin. And then the next point I'll make is 1 Corinthians 15:33, a verse everybody needs to know right here. I'm telling you, 1 Corinthians is a great book. It is a great book about Paul trying to explain to them how they can be better Christians. 1 Corinthians 15:33 is a passage that everybody needs to know. 1 Corinthians 15:33 is a great passage to teach your kids. Do not be deceived. Evil company corrupts good habits. Bad company corrupts good character. If you hang out with the dogs, you're going to get fleas. What's Paul trying to tell them? If you're going to live a godly life, you can't live with people who live an ungodly life. You can't hang out with people who live an ungodly life. You cannot walk with those people. You can't date that person. You can't marry that person. You can't be with those people. If you're going to try to fight against sin, you got to put yourself in the right places. You got to fight against all types of sin. That's how you're going to be a better Christian. And listen to this. There's no temptation that you're going through that everybody else has not experienced either. And you can overcome it. So, here's the whole thing that Paul's talking about this morning. This is the whole thing. This is the whole, exactly what we're trying to say this morning. 3 questions. Number 1, are you a believer? You've got to be a believer and follower of Jesus. That makes you a Christian. Number 2, are you running to win? Are you running to win? Or are you barely even trying? Are you trying to be the best Christian in Georgia? That's what it means to try to win the gold medal. I mean, I'm not just barely doing anything. I'm trying to be the best I can be. Run like you're trying to win the gold medal. That's what Paul was trying to exhort them to do. And the reality is, we know this. Most people aren't doing that. Most people are just putting forth a little effort. Are you a believer? Are you running to win? And are you fighting against sin? See, the Christian life is a lifelong struggle with sin. It's a lifelong struggle. you have to fight against it. You have to fight. You have to push it aside. You have to flee from it. You have to submit yourself to God. Draw near to Him, and the devil will flee from you, the Bible says. It is a lifelong struggle. You want to be a better Christian, you run to win and you fight against sin. And if you're not doing those things today, then you need to. Right? Why should we? Why should we? And I said I was done. I'm going to read one more verse because it just popped in my head right here. If I can remember where this is. Yeah, listen to this. Why should we even care if I'm a good Christian? Why not just say, who cares? 10 hours, 39 minutes a day. I don't say nothing wrong with that. I got that much time, that's good. Listen to this. Listen to what Paul said. This is out of 1 Corinthians 15:32. If in the manner of men I have fought with beasts at Ephesus, what advantage is it me? Listen to what he says. If the dead do not rise, let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. You know what he said? If there's no resurrection of the dead, then you know what? Let's just eat and drink and not worry about it. Let's just take it easy. Man, let's just live it up. Let's just have a little R&R. But you know what the reality is? What Paul will say? There is a resurrection of the dead. There is a heaven. There is a hell. There are people who are not saved. There is a reality that your neighbors, people around you, do not know the truth. Somebody needs to come in here and be convinced by everybody that God is truly among us. It matters. That's what's at stake here. Heaven and hell for other people if you're a believer. That's why Paul said in 1 Corinthians 9:22, Paul said, I have become all things to all people so that I might save some. Paul desperately wanted other people to be saved. He wanted to use his life that way. How are you going to use your life that way? You're going to run to win and fight against sin. If you don't care, then you're not going to do those things. When you really get your heart right and your mind's right, you're going to try to run to win and you're going to fight against sin. It's going to affect you, your marriage, your home, your kids, the people you work with, the people you know, your extended family, your church family, people in the community. If you will run to win and fight against sin, it will make a difference. If you don't, it ain't going to make much difference. Bottom line. If I be real honest with y'all, y'all know how I'm able to preach and teach all the time. I can preach 3, 4, 5 times a week. And it ain't that hard for me. You know why? It's not because I read the Bible 45 hours a week. This is just me being real honest. It's because there was a time in my life when I read the Bible like crazy. I read it all the time. You know what? I still am able to preach because I learned all that back then. See, somebody asked me to preach a sermon tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock somewhere. I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, I got to learn something in the Bible. I already know. I know enough. Why? Because of what I did in the past. You know what I'm doing? I'm telling you right now, I'm not near what I was then. Now, you understand what I'm saying? I learned a ton then. A ton. I've got Bibles stacked up this high in my office off the floor that I've read all the way through that I've retired. See? Because there was a time in my life where I was running the win. And it made a difference. And if we're all honest, we're not all running to win. We're often not. There might be a time when you are, but then you go back and you're back to just living life normal. And just read the Bible a little bit here and there. So, I'm asking you this morning, are you a believer, are you running to win, or are you fighting against sin? Those are the questions you need to ask yourself. Miss Lisa, if you don't mind to come play for us, we'll have an invitation. And 1 Corinthians is all about being a better Christian. A little funny story here. Y'all know how many tardies my kids have this year at school? 0. And we set a record in the past. You had to sign on this sheet. We signed in front of that sheet, the back of that sheet, the margins of that sheet. They had sheets stapled together. Yeah, they had tardies all over the place. You know why I say that? You can make changes in your life. You run to win, it'll make a difference. That's kind of a joke, but I'm telling you. You look at your life where it is now, where it can be. You don't have to be the way you've always been. So I don't know nothing about the Bible. You don't have to die that way. You can read, you can come to Sunday school, you can learn, you can grow, or you can remain a baby in Christ. Everybody's giving you a bottle every time you come to church because they can't talk about anything because we're all babies. Because we look at our phone 10 hours and 39 minutes a day. So I'm preaching to myself and my family and everybody in our church family this morning. And I hope that we can find a way to run to win and to fight against sin. If everybody will stand this morning.